Professor Skelton, on 18th of September 2023, a major shift took place in the realm of world ethics when the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child issued a general comment on the environment for the first time in history as part of their right to environmental health. The UNCRC decreed that children are to be protected from all forms of physical and psychological violence, whether in their home or in society, and from exposure to violence, such as domestic violence or violence inflicted on animals. This is an acknowledgement at the highest international level that how we treat animals matters for ourselves as much as for them. Could you give us insight into the buildup of information that culminated in this majorly progressive global step?
Yes, well, let me first explain that the main task of the CRC committee is to monitor how states are doing on the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The committee has previously asked states, for example, Spain, about the effects on children of witnessing bullfighting. And the general comment that you're referring to was issued by the committee. It's an authoritative document that indicates the committee's interpretation of the rights in the convention. We were considering the environment, and we wanted to stress the importance of educating children about the natural environment and stressing their close connection to that environment, including to animals.
The South American country of Colombia was one of the first UN member states to respond. In July 2024, Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced a ban on bullfighting, calling it a victory for both children and animals. Do you think the world is undergoing a cultural transformation in regard to animals?
Well, as I specialize in children's rights, I'm not sure about the transformations with regard to animals, but I do think that there is a growing understanding of the importance of animals to children, and that children's empathy and development are linked to their relationships with others and with animals.
So in February 2024, at the UN's 95th session of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, Committee Vice Chair Dr. Rinchen Choppel urged the South African delegation to criminalize the practice of allowing children to participate in trophy hunting. The industry behind this hugely lucrative sport seems to be keeping mum on the issue. Could you comment, please?
Well, as I'm a South African, I actually did not participate in the South African dialogue at the committee, but I sat in the room and I listened. So yes, I heard my colleague ask this question. Dr. Chauvel, by the way, is from Bhutan, which is a Buddhist country, and it prides itself on promoting happiness. And he frequently speaks up about the connections between children's rights and animal welfare. And that was the basis on which he asked this question. And the committee then made recommendations to ban trophy hunting, children's involvement in trophy hunting.
It seems we have a very long way to go in the way the world is at the moment. For example, the Gadamai festival in India exposes children to a 2-day sacrifice of millions of animals, and we have thousands of homeless dogs being shot in the streets of Morocco. How much time do you think this transition in world ethics will take?
What I can tell you is that all the states that have ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and that is actually all states except the United States of America, must come to report to the committee every 5 years. So every 5 years, the state comes back to the committee and tells the committee what has it done to achieve children's rights in the last 5 years. And the committee provides the state with recommendations, and that includes the kinds of recommendations that you've been pointing to. So amongst many, many other recommendations, the committee will, for example, and has asked states to stop exposure of children to hunting or to bullfighting or to culling done in a brutal way or in front of children where children can see dogs being put down, for example. So this is it's on the committee's agenda, as I say, amongst many others, but we do see the committee has been asking questions about this issue.
We have reached out to UNICEF Africa on several occasions for comment and a show of support for GC 26 Article 35, about the animals, inclusion of animals, welfare. But we've received no response at all. Other countries have had similar experiences in their efforts to engage UNICEF. We wonder why the most powerful agency for the protection of children seems lackluster in regard to this particular mandate of the CRC.
Well, UNICEF is a very important player in children's rights, and I should imagine, look, they do have their hands full with all the crises affecting children in the world today because they're a front runner in, humanitarian efforts and so on as well. I did read an interesting article recently about work being done in Ukraine by UNICEF together with children to provide safety for animals who were displaced by the war. So children were engaged in a project to feed animals and look after animals that were on the streets in this particular town or city in Ukraine. But going beyond UNICEF, there's also a recognition in the children's rights world of the therapeutic effect of animals for children who are ill or children who are traumatized. And I have a couple of interesting examples that I've seen recently. I viewed a fascinating film called After the Rain, which is about children who had been taken from Ukraine to Russia. They were abducted and taken to Russia, but then they were later returned to relatives who went to Russia to fetch them. And then a therapeutic clinic in somewhere in Scandinavia invited these children and their caregivers to come for a week's therapy in a beautiful, idyllic setting. And there were horses and dogs and many animals in that setting. And it was really fascinating seeing how these professionals in trauma counseling and grief counseling and so on were incorporating animals into the children's therapy. And it appeared to be a very effective way of getting children to express their feelings and to feel more comfortable to be able to discuss, what was going on and what was troubling them. Another interesting thing that I saw just last year was I visited a children's hospital in Denver, in Colorado, and there they have comfort dogs who work in the hospital. They're trained dogs with, obviously there are trainers that are working with these dogs, but you can walk around the hospital's spaces and find children just sitting on the floor petting dogs, or you can see dogs sitting by children's bedsides. And I found it really amazing to see just how directly dogs are involved in children's recovery in a hospital like that.
It's so fascinating. We recently celebrated the United Nations International Day of Education on the 24th of January 2025. Please, could you give us a message for the teachers who visit and make use of our nature-based education platform, which is underpinned by the 5 freedoms for animals as endorsed by the World Organization for Animal Health?
The Convention on the Rights of the Child, which actually is a binding instrument, in other words, states are obliged to fulfill what is in that convention. So it creates obligations for states, and it says that children must be educated to have respect for the natural environment. So engaging in nature-based education is not just a nice to have, it's a right. The committee's general comment on the environment that we spoke about earlier is also available in a child-friendly version, so teachers can make use of it in their work as well.
Thank you. Professor Skelton, thank you for what you've done for our children and the animals.